Hi everybody, and welcome to SA Rugby Magazine. I'm Kevin Ferguson, aka Moneyman, and I've got Gavin Rich, aka Rich Pickings. Hi Gavin, how are you, man?
Not too bad, Kevin. Good, quite good. Quite a lot happening suddenly.
Well, no Test rugby to July, and with the rivalry tour, you couldn't get a better topic than Scott Robertson being. What do you make of that? I mean,
well, when he took the job, there were a lot of people who felt that he was a better fit for Crusaders than he was for the All Blacks because he's a charismatic kind of coach. And look, you and I, we both.
He was a reluctant choice, though, wasn't he?
No, he wanted for who? Oh, you mean for the New Zealand Rugby?
I always felt he was a reluctant choice for
but he wanted the job.
Yes,
there's going to be a lot of New Zealand Rugby people, and particularly the ex-All Black coaches, who aren't going to feel sorry for him.
No,
because he actively campaigned against the predecessor, Ian Foster. We remember when they came out here and they lost to Nelspruit. They were, there was a whole big move to get.
He was one loss away from being
yes,
fired.
exactly, and he'd done a proposal, and he actively, and he wasn't popular within coaching circles in New Zealand because of that. So they're not going to feel sorry. But what I was going to say about Scott Robertson, you and I both rate John Dobson as a coach, but a lot of John Dobson's charisma. And Scott Robertson's quite similar. And I would say that Dobbo is great for the Stormers, but I'm not entirely sure that I'd sort of take him for the Springboks, if you know what I mean. It's almost like he's Cape. He's very good with the Cape people and the Cape, the whole Cape psyche.
His blood is blue.
His blood is blue, not necessarily green.
Yeah.
And that might be the thing with Scott Robertson is that he had that sort of that charisma, that personality that gelled with the Crusaders players and the Crusaders community and
the breakdancing charm.
Yes, but it didn't it? And there were red flags very early in his tenure. When Ian MacDonald walked out, he was the senior assistant coach. He left, I think, after just a couple of months of the first season in charge. Holland has just announced that not that long ago that he wasn't going to be an assistant coach anymore. So when your assistant coaches start to walk out, then you can sort of judge. If they axed, it's a different thing. But if they actually they want to leave, it's a different story. I didn't know that the All Black players were unhappy with Scott Robertson, but obviously that came out in the
player review.
Player review. Yeah. So
look, I think that any time, and I'm a businessman, so I was looking at it from a business point of view. You've got to pay Scott Robertson now a 2-year piss-off clause.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to pay someone 2 years to piss off, the problems are deep. And,
absolutely.
And it's like, okay, because for me, the reviews from the players must have been terrible. Yeah. I've heard from my sources, and I have good sources, that some people were like, this guy doesn't have a fucking clue what he's doing.
Yeah.
And, I don't blame it all on Scott Robertson because you've got a resurgent Springbok team that's the best team in the world. And, it didn't matter who's coaching the All Blacks last year. They're going to take, they were under the pump.
Yeah.
Losing to England, losing to South Africa.
43-10. I mean, that's a killer.
Yeah. Look, I said at the time to people that were there that you may never see this again. Yeah. Well, in your lifetime.
Yes. Look, I mean, I mentioned John Dobson just now, so I just want to clarify something now that we've gone further down the road. I think that Scott Robertson, from what I always heard, wasn't very technically strong, and he might have. And I'm not saying that about Dobbo at all. It's just, I think you know what I'm saying. It's a culture thing that he just really belonged in that culture, Scott Robertson. But for New Zealand as a whole, for the All Blacks from the beginning, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, everybody says, well, they had improved results this season. If the French had taken a full-strength French team to New Zealand in July, they probably would have won that series 2-1 or even 3-0. And then it would be a very different wins and losses ratio for the All Blacks. They ended up only losing 3 games, but they were significant games. They lost 43-10 to South Africa, and then they lost 33-19 at the end of the year to England. And the game against Argentina was their first ever loss in Argentina. And although the scoreline wasn't big, they were outplayed in that game, if you remember. So it doesn't, it's, to me the big concern, which I'm sure you're going to get onto, is how it might impact the Springboks.
Well, enter stage left. Yeah, Tony Brown.
Yeah, Tony Brown is a big mate of Jamie Joseph. And Jamie
And we must say that Jamie Joseph is probably the short favourite to take the job.
Yes, he is. He
All the
would be.
belts and braces are in
Yeah.
place for him to
Yeah.
take up the mantle. And if he takes the job, there's a clause we believe
Yeah, I've heard that.
that's in Tony Brown's contract that says he can leave.
Yes, because I mean, look, Jamie Joseph, to my knowledge, and I actually had this checked up with the source this morning. I woke up really early this morning and saw this news and started WhatsApping around the place. And the message I got back from somebody who knows them both said, "Listen, they've never done anything. They've always done everything together. A little bit like Rassie and Jacques Nienaber until quite recently.
Batman and Robin.
Yeah, they were Batman and Robin. So it's highly unlikely that Jamie Joseph will take the job without making an approach to Tony. And I did interview Tony last year before the test against Australia, and I asked him, would you want the All Black job? And, where we're going. And he said, listen, mate, they just didn't want me. He said, you don't go where you're not wanted. So in other words, I would like the All Black job, but they didn't want me. Now, if they do want him, it changes the whole ballpark. So then the question is, like, what happens to the box? But that's for the coming. Let's just see it happen first before we.
Well, a week's a long time in rugby.
Yeah.
I mean, it's there's always the scripts always write themselves.
Yeah.
And I would just leave it with this: is that you've got Rassie, that's a genius.
Yeah.
And it's not as if you're not going to have a couple plan A, B, C, and D. You know?
Well, probably, and Tony Brown's put the fundamentals in place. I think what the Springboks need is what the Sharks need. They actually need. I mean, I'm talking about going
new
forward.
owners.
Sorry.
New owners.
well, the Sharks need. No, I think the Sharks actually probably need a skills coach. I've just watching them and how they just their skill levels are just so poor. And this, when I say the Springboks need that, is under Tony Brown their skills have really come through.
Yeah,
and so,
but it's not as if Tony didn't come with some criticism.
Yeah,
from South Africa
initially,
right?
But I mean, if somebody, I mean, there's certain people out there who are attack coaches, and so if Tony goes, we just need to identify one who's good at bringing through those skills. But so it might not have to be a train smash. I think he's helped South Africa change the mindset. The South African players change the mindset, and
without a doubt,
that's important. And now we go back to the question I asked him. I said, "Do you not worry?" Because I said there's always been this. This is when I was interviewing. Well, I wasn't the only one interviewing Tony. There were two other guys there. It was in Joburg in was it? They came in August. I think it was in August. I said, aren't you concerned that you're actually helping South Africa realise that there's other ways to win, and that one day you're going to be an All Black coach or assistant coach, and you're going to end up reaping what you sow.
Yeah.
And he said, well, there's always that possibility.
Yeah, it's. Certainly, watching the Boks last year in their athleticism was revealing. It was wow.
So we've got to keep on that path.
Yes,
you can't sort of say, well, Tony Brown's got. I mean, we're talking about as if he's gone. I mean, they might actually be. I mean, the New Zealand rugby might make the mistake because they should actually appoint Jamie Joseph just to take Tony Brown away from us. But they might do something stupid and appoint someone else. I don't know if Joe Schmidt's available for the job, for instance. I mean, he's a Kiwi.
Yeah, you never know, do you? But it'd be sad to see Tony go in terms of what he's accomplished and the Boks progression. Sad day for South African rugby if he does, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's get into looking at the performance of South African teams last week. It was wasn't a green flag weekend for the South African teams, huh?
And particularly not for the Bulls. I mean, they were
21-0 after 10 minutes, I think. Huh?
Yeah, in fact, I think it was even less than that. I mean, it was. I was sitting at home with obviously we always sit with our WhatsApp on and everything, and I got my colleague who writes about the Bulls, but he lives in Muscle Bay, so he's sitting at home these days. But he was WhatsApping me, what the hell's going on? Well, he was using stronger language than that.
Yeah.
And I said, I've never seen such woeful defence in my life.
It was Spanish defence, ole.
It was just ridiculous. And the previous week we'd spoken about there being an improvement against the Stormers. But the Bulls will always get up for a derby. South African derby will always be a derby, particularly between those two teams, because the testosterone just comes to the fore. And I think the Stormers might also get sucked into that. And it was almost too physical that we...
When was the last time the Bulls won? Was it under Jake?
Well, they actually, if you look at their record this year, they started off by beating the Ospreys 53-40, I think it was. And then the following week, they beat a weakened Leinster team 39-31. So you notice that they won, but that other team was always scoring high score, getting a high score. Even early in the season when they were winning, the opponents were scoring an average of 5 tries a game. And then they went on. I think they lost. I think their first loss was to Ulster in Ulster. It was also, I think, the first time that they went full strength. But I remember thinking at the time it's just a case of the players fitting in. But now looking back, I think that the Bulls' problem has been that Johan Ackermann's come in and he's got a way of playing which I think he learned from John Mitchell at the Lions years ago, and he carried on with the Lions with the conditioning platform that he'd been given by John Mitchell. And the Lions achieved qualified success. I say qualified success because they never ever won a final.
Well, they never had. They were. Well, they turned out to be rich in talent. It was developed. Yeah. But they didn't have any brand names, did they?
They didn't. Well, they became brand names as well. I mean, Faf de Klerk, for instance, came out of there. And Warren Whiteley became a big name before he got injured. And there were guys in that sense. And Malcolm Marx.
Of course.
Malcolm Marx. How can you forget Malcolm Marx? But, so Ackermann at the Lions had a certain way of playing, fast tempo, wide game, and to me it looks like he's trying to do that at the Bulls. And in doing that, they're not mixing up their game enough. Last week I kept on thinking, come on guys, just tighten it up, drive through the forwards. And admittedly, when you're 21-0 after 10 minutes, you're going to become loose and I think that happened to the Stormers as well.
But the Bears looked like they were playing sevens rugby.
Yeah.
To me, it was like swinging everything wide and taking. I mean, the amount of missed tackles in the first 15 minutes of that game by the Bulls was astounding. Like I said, it was Spanish defence. Olé, you know.
Well, I read an interesting piece by Stuart Barnes, former England fly half, in the Times. He did a column, and apparently he was quite critical of Bristol earlier in the year because under Pat Lam, they've made it known that they want to play that type of rugby, like fast-forward rugby. And apparently Stuart Barnes has been critical, but they've been winning games like this before this, and they've won. So I don't remember who they've beaten, but they've won some big games with scores like that. And Barnes has always been very, a little bit. He hasn't bought into the hubris, but now he's saying it's not hubris. He says, well, maybe they just actually are very good at playing that type of game. So there is that. I think you do need to give credit to them. I don't agree with Stuart. Stuart's contention was that the South African critics are missing the point because it wasn't the Bulls' defence that let them down. It was how good the Bristol were. That's nonsense. I think the Bulls missed a heck of a lot of tackles in that game. But you've got to look at English club rugby and where English club rugby is now. I remember years ago you thought of English club rugby and you imagined a game played in the wet at this time of the year, and it was just 10-man rugby with
10-3.
Yeah, like the Dusty Hares, and remember the guys from that era, Rob Andrew. You had that type of rugby, which is why Stuart Barnes never played more games for England than he did, because he was a running flower half. So they've moved away from that because that Harlequins have been known as a running team for a long time.
Yeah.
But against the Stormers, they were and I'm not saying that they didn't kick, because kick attack was a big part of their game. But the Harlequins were outstanding, I thought, against an admittedly weakened Stormers team, and a Stormers team that after they scored the first try, in fact, even before the first try, I thought that their defence looked very passive. It was almost as if they were, they just had a really bad day at the office. Like some people are now telling me that the Storm. I know we're moving away from the Bulls now, but some people have been.
It's okay. It's not a bad subject to move away from. To be honest.
the Stormers. I just think they had a really bad day at the office. Everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong, except their scrum. And they had a second choice. Their scrum was still dominant throughout. Even when the reserves came on, they were still dominant. And their line-out was also still functioned. But just about everything else just went completely wrong for the Stormers. And I've never seen. Okay, I probably have. It reminded me a little bit of that 38 points that Australia scored against South Africa at Ellis Park last year. I've never seen the ball bounce as well for a team.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just freaky. I mean, the ball sort of bounced and suddenly goes over there to the lock. I think he was a reserve lock and went and scored. It was one of the second half tries. And I was watching this and I was thinking, these guys are obviously very religious.
It's not their day.
They prayed to their deity before the game, and he decided that this will be your day. Yeah. Because it was like that. They just ran amok, but full credit to Harlequins, and who I think we did say last week that we didn't make a call on this.
No, I just wouldn't bet against the Stormers because it's like they've
But
had
at the
10-0
same time-
start to the season,
Yeah.
and you're not betting on that. But
Yeah.
I got involved when it was 17-0. I think
Okay.
Harlequins, and took them at 24.5-point favorites.
Okay.
So I made some money.
Okay, because they I mean that was the thing about that game, was that you always felt that with Harlequins being in a situation where they were under so much pressure. Because remember, their chairman had come out with a statement with Harlequins,
And their CEO.
and their CEO. I mean, they had that double statement that came out the week before. Plus, they'd made it clear that they were now targeting Europe, and that's always I think South African fans are taking a while to cotton on to the reality that overseas teams, they get to a certain juncture of the season where they decide whether they're going to target,
Europe.
particularly the French team, whether they're going to target Europe or they're going to target their league. And it's clear that Harlequins have now decided that they're going to try and go as far as they because I think they're 7th or 8th. They're 8th in the Premiership. So
Which is 10 teams, yeah?
yeah, which is 10 teams. So they've got nothing to play for in the Premiership. So they want to go as far as they possibly can. So, and it's a very different situation to the Stormers, who went overseas, had a 6-day turnaround before their game against Leicester Tigers here on Saturday. So the Stormers had to go under strength. In the end, they went with a slightly stronger team than I thought they might, but they still had 4 debutants. And the most significant thing for the Stormers in this game, because if it had been the normal Stormers team and the other side had gone 19-0 up quite early like Quins did, I wouldn't have taken your bet. I would have actually bet on the Stormers still recovering, not necessarily winning, but coming back based on the fact that they'd have a very strong bench. But they didn't have a strong bench.
No.
Their bench was a weakness in this game. So once they were behind, they were always going to lose. So
Yeah, look, I did 2 bets in running. One was over 96.5 points in the Bulls game, which
Okay.
came in.
Okay.
And I took the Stormers. I took Harlequins minus 27 when it was 17.
Okay.
So both cashed in. I was happy.
Okay.
Not with the result, obviously. I thought I really thought the Bulls were.
Well,
I mean, I think that's 6 losses in a row now with the Bulls.
we went for a big Bulls win. You and I. I mean, didn't we say 15 points?
Yeah, I saw just one result, but then,
Yeah.
I mean, like you say, it's we talked off air about the ghost of Jake.
Yes, we did. Yeah, the ghost of Jake, and that is to me an issue. I mean, I know he supposedly lost the change room, but then I'm also told that it was 12 players, and some of the others were quite bemused with what happened. Suddenly Jake was gone, and these guys apparently were sitting there thinking, but how did that happen? And so it was a group of 12 players, and I think some of the assistant coaches who they seconded or commandeered to represent them. So Scott Robertson has lost his job at the All Blacks because he lost the locker room. Okay, but where he's different to Jake, in my opinion, is that Scott Robertson, supplementary to him losing the locker room, was that he wasn't really getting results at the All Blacks. I mean, quite clearly. I mean, I know they only lost 3 games, but we've spoken about it already. They by All Black standards, that wasn't good. And a 43-10 defeat. And the previous season, he wasn't particularly good. And if France had gone there with a full strength team, they probably would have won that series. They lost 33-19 at the end of the year to England. So I think that there was a feeling in the New Zealand public that maybe this guy isn't good enough. Whereas with Jake, when he came in as the Bulls coach in 2020, I think it was, the Bulls hadn't actually been competitive for quite a while. Remember, they were being coached by Puerto Human then, and Jake came in. They went and they won the Currie Cup. They won the Super Rugby Unlocked. They played in the final of the Rainbow Cup. And then he took them to 3 URC finals. Yeah. They finished second on the log, I think, 2 years in a row.
No, they were a formidable team, right?
They were a formidable team, and the players that he's brought in. I mean, would Andre, if Jake was such an ogre, would Andre Pollard have decided to come to Pretoria? I'm not so sure about that. Would Jan Serfontein have come? Nicolas, he's actually, what actually sort of disturbs me a bit, what makes me disappointed is that Jake had sort of finally started to get the team that he wanted in terms of what's been recruited. So he wasn't, so yes, okay, so the players were unhappy with him, and yes, he lost the change room, and you should never back a coach once he's lost the change room. But if you went to the Bulls supporters now and you said, listen, would you rather have an unhappy team who don't back their coach but make the final every year, or would you rather have a coach who sort of presides over seven games, 7 consecutive losses, and will probably be 8 this weekend? And I'm pretty sure I know what most Bulls fans would answer.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where the vicious circle starts now. Less and less fans.
Yeah.
It's like, what are they playing for? They're knocked out of the Investec Cup.
And the Bulls, to me, have always been built around discipline, because it's almost like the guys are scared of having because as a replacement for Jake, if they were going to replace Jake, what they needed to do was bring in a guy who'd taken a step further than Jake. In other words, had won a URC.
Who's that? Who would be that guy, though?
Would be Franco Smith in Glasgow. I mean, he won the URC title by
I'm sorry.
By coaching them. And Franco Smith was the other guy that was available for the, and I think Jacques Nienaber. I don't know if Jacques was actually, but I know that Franco was keen on the job. And I think that the only thing that you could have against Franco Smith I wouldn't have an argument then. I wouldn't sort of say keep Jake. I would say, okay, I understand what you're doing. You want to get a guy who can take them to the next step. Not that Jake is incapable of that. He's won a World Cup. I mean, for goodness sake, he's won a major competition before. But when it came when it comes to Franco, I think that the reason that they went against him was they almost wanted like a cuddly uncle type of coach, somebody who'd come in and make the players feel good because they've had Jake because they've had Jake as the coach before. I think there was an element of that. But to me, the Bulls' success, when they've had success in the years I've been watching rugby, and I've probably been following the Bulls for 50 years now, and it started off with Brigadier Beerman van Zyl in the second half of the 1970s. He was a real tyrant. He was brigadier. I mean, you can see he was obviously military or police. I can't remember, but I mean, he basically was a very strict disciplinarian. And all the Bulls coaches that have achieved success since then, Heineke Meyer, John Williams. Okay, Frans Ludiker was a different type of coach, but I think he built on Heineke. I think the players were running the team by the time Frans Ludiker. But those are the successful coaches the Bulls have. They've always been built around discipline and disciplined coaches. And I just think that the Bulls, I'm not sure if Johan Ackerman is the right fit for the Bulls. I mean,
how much? Let me ask you this question, Gab. How much patience do the Bulls have with them losing at least 6 games in a row?
Apparently,
I think it's 6 games in a row, yeah?
No, it's 7.
Seven.
Yeah. I thought it was 6, and then Brendan Nell pointed out to me that no, I was wrong. It's actually 7. So that's why I say by the time this weekend comes, it's 8. Then they're playing Edinburgh in 9 in the URC, so it could be 9 because they don't tend to do well
in Edinburgh,
in Scotland, and then I think the next game's the return game against the Stormers. I'm not sure. Or no, the next game might be the away game to the Lions. The away game to the Lions in Johannesburg. That's touch and go. And then the return game.
Well, to me, that game was so important. That game was such a statement for where the Bulls are when the Lions beat them,
Yeah, yes, that game at Loftus. Yeah. And that was where he was playing. They were playing that loose rugby as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it was that should have been a warning. I mean, the Lions ran up 43 points against them. I mean, that was a warning. So
well, that's one of the things that shocks me about the Bulls is their Spanish defense. It's just not
there.
No.
Well, remember we spoke about it last week that during the Christmas week, the week between Christmas and New Year, they made the announcement that they're bringing in 4 Springbok assistant coaches. So they might turn it around, but at the same time, that was a red flag. Because, yes, I know the Stormers have used the Springbok coaches in the past and the Sharks have had them visit, but that's part of the sort of the Springbok year, and it's something that... something that happens in a matter of course. To actually make the announcement that you're bringing these guys in, to me, was a warning flag that we sort of see ourselves as being in a bit of a crisis. Otherwise, they should never have announced it. Can you imagine Jake going out and saying, "Listen, I want to bring the Springbok coaches to help me"? Because to me, it almost sort of suggested that weakness when they made that announcement, and I don't think Jake would have done that.
No, I don't think so either. But it's. I mean, what does the season have in store for the Bulls now? I don't think there's nothing to play for, is there? No,
they can still get back into the URC. Don't, as I said to you a couple of weeks or last week, don't bet against them coming down here because they're going to finish probably 8th or 7th. The Stormers might finish in the top 2. I mean, the way the URC works, you end up playing a quarterfinal It'll be 2 against 7, and they could come down here and beat the Stormers if they get their act together. You know how strong that Bulls team is. If they had everyone fit, they could have Willie Leroux at fullback. The only non-Springbok would be Sebastian de Klerk on the one
But
wing.
I think Billy's.
Kurt-
I think Billy's a bit too old.
No, I also do, but he's still a Springbok. Then you've got Kurtley Orense on the other wing. You've got Kane and Moody and Jan Serfontein in the centre. You've got a Springbok halfback pairing. You've got, if Cameron Harlequins ever comes back, I'm a bit worried at the length of time he's taking to come back, that he might not ever be the same player again. But if he's the same player he was when he comes back from his injury, they've got him at number 8, Ulrich Loh, who I'm also not sure is going to fully recover from his injury, based on what I've seen so far. Ulrich Loh at number 7, though, at his best. And then you've got Marco van Staden at 6, Ruan Nochi and Kobus Visa. And then you've got a whole Springbok front row of Gerard Steenekamp, Johan Grobbelaar, and Wilco Low until he comes to the Stormers next year. So that's a very strong Bulls team.
It's
If they
strong
can,
team playing in the wrong system.
yes, well, that's what I'm saying. So
It's a very strong Sharks team playing for the wrong owner.
yeah,
It's like-
well, there's a very strong Sharks team playing for the wrong reason as well, possibly. Too many of them have been bought there almost like on a mercenary type of like we go in there for
They're
the
the
money.
expendables.
Yeah, we would rather be living in Cape Town, but they're paying us, so we'll play out of Durban.
Exactly.
That
That's
sums it up.
exactly. That's a great summation. But yeah, it's. I don't see. You got. Yeah, they're 3-5. The Bulls, like you said, they got tough games coming up,
Yeah.
and you lose 2 of those, and you're out of the race. I mean, you may keep your sights on an 8th-place finish, but it's over.
It is. Well, they've got this terrible this thing, and we're going to go into this weekend's games, I'm sure. But you know that we understand why the French sometimes almost deliberately lose games.
Yes, yeah.
Is because they've got this situation coming up where if they don't win against Pau at the weekend, Scarlets are the other team are at the bottom of the log. If they go past Scarlets, so it's almost like better, because I wouldn't want to play in the Challenge Cup. The Challenge Cup is a secondary competition. You'd rather actually just focus on the URC after this, rather than because you have to travel. So they would have to travel somewhere to play somebody. I remember John Dobson last year, they rather than finishing 5th, in which case they would have been in the Challenge Cup, they finished 6th, and I think they were quite pleased about that, because the Sharks, on the other hand, had won the Challenge Cup the year before, ended up 5th, ended up back in the Challenge Cup, and they just played almost like a C team after that, because they just weren't interested. So the Sharks, the Bulls, his prize for winning at the weekend might be to finish 5th, and then they got to play in the Challenge
The
Cup.
Bulls are not going to beat Pau.
I don't think they're going to beat Pau. No, I don't think they're going to beat Pau.
Let's not even
Except
open.
last week we said that Bristol are not going to beat the Bulls.
Yeah, it's like we got to get some things wrong, bud.
True.
Okay, so let's get into the weekend rugby fixtures. And okay, so you got the Sharks versus Clermont. Sharks at home.
Sharks at home. The Clermont are a French team. If I'm not incorrect, they're bottom of the log with no points at the moment. Am I correct in saying that? They're bottom of the pool 1, and with no points, the Sharks have 5. So even if Clermont win, they're not going to overtake the Sharks, and then they're going to get that booby prize, which is a trip to a Challenge Cup game somewhere. Although if it could be in England, so it's not like a South African team making a Challenge Cup where they have to go across the equator. But I think Clermont will come to Durban with the second string team, and the Sharks. The Sharks, the way I look at it, they have to depend on Toulouse losing to Sale in Toulouse, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. I know Toulouse have dropped a few games recently, but that's not going to happen. So I actually don't know why the Sharks went under strength to Sale last week. They should have
Especially with the owner blabbing.
blabbing online.
Yeah.
I mean, they should have taken their strongest team because they had a 7-day turnaround. It wasn't like the Stormers.
Look,
The
they put
Stormers
in
had
a decent
6-day
performance, I thought.
They didn't put up a bad performance with their 6, but that makes it even worse, because if they'd taken their strongest team, they would have won that game. I'm convinced they would have won that game.
I'm not.
You're not. Their strongest team.
Well, the strongest team. What has the strongest team done this year?
Well, the strongest team has lots of Springboks, but when they don't wear a Springbok jersey, they don't play like Springboks.
Exactly.
So that is a point, but they should still have gone with their strongest team. if they were chasing a place in the Champions Cup, to me it doesn't make sense that they went with a weakened team last week. But Clermont have very little to play for. I don't think that they'd want to actually usurp the Sharks and finish fifth and can.
No, Clermont 8-6.
Sorry,
8-6 this year in the French division. I don't look at the results in those other.
but you need to look at the results in those as well, because then also you've got to see how seriously they're taking the top 14. So I don't think Clermont are going to come here they might come here wanting to win, obviously, but I don't think they're going to come here with their strongest.
So this
team.
is the last game, yeah. This the fourth is
yeah,
the
this
last
is the
game.
last game. Yeah,
So the Bulls are rooted to the bottom
yeah,
with
Scarlets
with
2 points.
70 points difference.
Yeah, so they're not going to. Yeah, they're not going to get out of there. I mean, they even if they beat Power.
I mean, Scarlets are going to get absolutely pummeled by Northampton, aren't they?
Yeah, they should be.
So
Yeah.
it's I don't know what the tie-breaking situation is for fifth and sixth. It's like points difference.
Yeah. It will be points difference.
It is. So
Yeah.
right now, 70. The Bulls are minus 70, and the Scarlets are minus 39.
Okay, so it favours Scarlets,
It has to, because I mean,
but they're going to get pummeled as well. They're going to
they're
get
going to get pummeled by Northampton by 30.
Yeah.
But so are the Bulls going to get pummeled by 20. So the difference between 75.
do you think it'll
and
be as much as 20? I don't know. That's going to be an interesting
it's
one.
26. There's 26 points for the Scarlets to go to the other cup, right?
Okay.
So there's got to be a 26.
But who wants to go to the other cup? That's also yeah.
We could see some of the two worst games ever in
Yeah.
history.
But Scarlets will want to go to the other cup.
Yeah, of course they will.
Yeah, because for them winning the Challenge Cup or doing well in the Challenge Cup will be a win. For the Bulls, I suppose they're desperate for a trophy because they haven't won a trophy for a while. But
Well,
it would. There's
it's
nothing
the
to
travel and the expense of
It's
travel.
it's the travel. Yeah. Well, the Bulls are overseas for 2 games now, so they've gone on tour.
Yeah,
Because
so
they're playing next week in the URC. But to me, the fact that Kirtley Orense isn't playing in this game and Kane and Moody, I had the team here. They've basically chosen a bit of a weakened team. They still have Pollard at flower half. But generally, they've got Akka van der Merwe, for instance, at hooker, and not Johan Grobler. They've got Marco van Staden, actually, very interestingly, as a hooker reserve by the looks of things. So it's to me, that's an indication that the Bulls aren't going all out for the win in this game. They're actually targeting next week's game against Edinburgh in the URC.
yeah, I understand that. So, yeah, I think the Bulls finished last.
Yeah.
I think Pau beat them 20 plus.
I don't know if by more than 15, definitely. What are the odds? Do you know?
Yeah, I do.
I'd say that because Power are second in the top 14.
Well,
So they're having a good
The interesting thing, and this is where I'm like, I might have to put down 10,000. I'll tell you why. Pau are favored to win. You can get 25% return on your money.
Okay.
Now that doesn't sound great odds, but Pau will will pummel the Bulls. I think.
You see, it depends where the Power targeting the Europe as well. I mean, they will choose their strongest team at home.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure they're doing better in the top 14 than they've done.
Yeah, they're second.
Than they've done in years. So it's a difficult one. It's difficult to predict the French teams sometimes.
Pau are 1 point off Toulouse, 47 points
in the top
48
14.
versus 47. So in the top 14, they're doing very well. I think
that's the thing.
I think what are they in the third or fourth in the standings?
They're at the bottom. They're fourth in their pool.
Yeah, but they got 5 points. So
if they get 5 points against the Bulls, they go to 10, and then they're comfortably through to the next round.
Yeah.
So they've got that to aim for.
But the crazy thing with the South African teams is there's still some talent in South African rugby players.
Yeah.
So it's they're these guys are a bit of a wild card when it comes to playing. So if I was gonna bet, and I will, as you know,
Yeah.
I will be betting on Pau to beat the Bulls straight up to get a 25% return on my money.
Okay.
which is like playing with crypto money.
Uh-huh.
For a 2-hour game, I'll put 5,000 rand on POW to win 1,250 rand.
Okay.
Very unusual.
That
bet
sounds
for-
good. I would go with that. I wouldn't put 5,000 on, but I would go with that.
Yeah.
And what you're not looking at the margin.
I'm not looking at the handicap, but let me have a look at it. -9 is the handicap.
Okay, so they think Bulls are going to lose by 10. Is that
Yeah.
how? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, I like the.
I would go with between 10 and 20 rather than more than 20 like you do. Although I've seen the team now, and that team is a weaker Bulls team, so you might actually be right. Yeah. So
So go even money on the -9.
with on the
-9.
Yeah.
Take
Yeah.
POW to cover 10 or more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put a couple grand on that for
Yeah.
a 1,900 rand return.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my bet on the Bulls. I think it's a safe bet. I think you can
I
take
think-
that to the bank.
I think so.
What is next?
Well, the Stormers are playing. Okay, the first game on Saturday is featuring a South African team as the Sharks against Clermont. We've spoken about that. I think the Sharks will win that game quite comfortably. I think that I think we're looking at about 15-point win. And when I say 15 points, it's because there's a bit of an anomaly at Kings Park, as you know, in the sense that at this time of year there's lots of humidity. So it always feels like a wet weather game, and so it's not like Loftus where if the Bulls hit their straps at Loftus or any team hits their straps on the Highveld, they end up winning by 20 or 30. I'm not sure that Kings Park is the same.
Well, Clermont will probably send an average team.
They've got the odds there for that game. No.
The Sharks are overwhelming favorites, 24-1 for Clermont.
Okay. No, I would say that's right.
I'm staying away from that because
Yeah.
one, I don't like the Sharks.
And two, that you're not getting
There's no money to be
there's
made.
no money to be made on that one.
No.
And the Stormers.
The Stormers, I got a feeling that that's going to be very similar to the Yeah, it's the Stormers. You can get 4% return on your money. Meaning you bet 100, you get 4 rand back.
No, that's not true. That's not worth it.
No, it's not.
So they're saying that the Stormers are going to win that one.
They're saying the Stormers are going to win by 20 or more.
Have Leicester brought us a weaker team? Because that's what I'd like to know. Because I don't know. That sounds. I'm not sure if it's going to be as much as that. I mean, Leicester Tigers are a strong side. I mean, historically,
Well, we haven't seen the team.
we haven't seen the team. That is the problem with the Champions Cup, in my opinion, is that they leave the announcing of the teams till Friday, and by then it's too late for people like us to really. We'd have to change our minds
Yeah.
because there's but
You think 20, they say they're going to win by 21, the Stormers.
if they hit their straps, so of course, it's that situation we were talking about last week. You don't want to bet against the Stormers. The one problem with the Stormers at the moment is that that field's a bit tacky. And Dobber had a blast about it last week because apparently some guys are injured now because of that. And that might prevent them from going on a try-scoring spree, if you know what I'm saying. So I don't know, 21 might be a bit much.
Yeah. It might be.
It might
Look,
be a bit
I don't
much.
know. I wouldn't. When you got these massive handicaps, the Stormers will win, but 21 might be too much. I'll have to look at the team on Friday. Huh?
Pardon?
I'll have to look at the team on Friday.
Yeah. I mean, last week, I mean, if we'd had a show late on Friday afternoon, the ones I'd seen the Stormers team last week. I mean, okay, we didn't.
Well, the Stormers went in from even money.
But when the Stormers team was announced, was weaker than I thought it was going to be.
Well,
Actually, yeah.
Like I said, maybe we should do the show on Fridays now because it's that market moved 65%. It went from even money on the Stormers down to 1.35 on Harlequins.
Well, maybe we should do two shows. Do one and I do one from home on Friday afternoon.
Yeah,
It's
just with
because it does change. You're right. It does. It changed completely. There was another one as well. Yes, when the Sharks announced their team, it was a bit stronger than the one that I thought they. So then the spread was smaller there than I initially thought. I thought they were going to take the same team that had lost to Toulouse, but they had a couple of good players in that side last week.
Look, insight on these things is wonderful for betting, because for a market to move in one day 65%.
Yeah.
is unbelievable. You just don't get that in markets.
Yeah.
So with these sort of games, the way that people treating the competition, there's lots of money to be made if you get it right.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Lots of money to lose if you get it wrong. So we need some responsible gambling. But it's the market moved 65%. The Stormers lost by 40 points.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So everybody was betting on everybody that piled in on even money on Harlequins made a fortune.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
No. So we'll have to wait for that, Gav. But the Stormers should win by 10 plus, I think.
No, I would say that's more. I would be more conservative. But I mean, as I say, if I see the Leicester team tomorrow afternoon, I might change my mind. But
well, we'll have a look at it. If it's noteworthy, I'll post another show on it in terms of the players playing in the game and how that affects the markets. But it's again, last week was terrible for the South African franchises.
It was. I think we'll have 2 wins this weekend.
A bit of bad news for the Boks with Tony Brown. Hopefully next week will be better.
Well, let's see. I mean, there's some interesting other games this weekend as well. But I mean, it's
like which ones?
Well, Saracens are playing against Glasgow Warriors. That's
Saracens won last week, didn't they?
That affects the Sharks in a way. Saracens won last week against Toulouse. That was a big win for them. But now they're going to Scottstown. So I always like to watch the URC teams and how well they do. Because, South Africans as part of the URC, and I like to get to gauge the strength of the URC. And so the Stormers are now third in there, but they were top in their pool not that long ago. So the Stormers have done well. Edinburgh are second in their pool. And Glasgow are top of their pool. Munster still have a chance of getting into the round of 16. Obviously, the Sharks don't actually, and I'm not so sure about the Bulls either. But it's just interesting seeing how.
Well, the Bulls have very little chance.
Yeah.
Unless a miracle happens, right?
Yeah. No, for sure. And I don't think that having looked at the team that they've selected, I don't think they're going for it.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
Well, folks, thanks for joining us. Give us a like and thumbs up or whatever that thing is. And Gav, thanks very much for coming in. And next week, let's hope that the All Blacks have made their choice and that Rassie starts his search for what will probably be another backs coach.
Yeah, I think we could be in that position this time next year.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll take too long. In fact, the All Blacks are already going into a camp. Remember, they don't play they don't play in the off season. Well, they don't play in the summer like we do. But they're apparently going into a camp next week, so they might need a new coach by then.
Yeah, it should be a quick announcement. Huh?
Yeah.
And
They've probably already spoken to Jamie Joseph.
I'm sure they
Who's
have.
probably already spoken to Tony Brown.
Of course.
Who's probably already spoken to Rassie.
Let's not create panic in the Springbok camp. Thanks for coming in, Gav. I love talking to you, and hopefully we'll have some more announcements next week.
Great.
Thanks
Keith.
guys. Cheers, man.